Well, again, despite having all these pencils, making a video is a lot easier than writing a book. I'm just back talking about the different books that I've written. I'm sorry, the books that I've read in the last, I don't know, 3 weeks or so. It's these 12 here, so I thought I'd show them to you. So, hello, I hope everyone's staying safe during this time of the virus. Like I said before, I don't watch a lot of television, so I spend my recreational time, at least, reading different secular books. So let's get to it. Let's see what we have. It's quite a bit of a collection. Some children's books, some adult books. So let's start here at the beginning. Back in the 1980s, I guess around 1984, around the time when Indiana Jones was popular, there was a series of adventure books for young people, Race Against Time. Basically, it's about so this young kid, he's kind of the protagonist that kids would relate to because he's someone their age. He lives in New York City, and his uncle is an adventurer. And so his uncle is 34 and moved back in with his big sister, which is his mother, and they don't know anything about his adventuring. They just think that he's a retired welder, and a retired engineer, I think. But every time that the parents go away for the weekend, his past catches up to him. He receives a call for help from an old friend somewhere in the world, and he has to go and have an adventure. And he takes his nephew with him, and they have this big adventure, and they have to get back before his parents get back. So that's why it's called Race Against Time. But it was pretty cool. I really enjoyed those books as a kid, and I'm reading them again. This one's Pursuit of the Deadly Diamonds. It takes place in Monaco, in the French Riviera. Then this one is Search for Mad Jack's Crown. This takes place. I'm trying to remember. I just read it too. The Deadly Diamonds and the next one I liked a lot better. This one I wasn't really keen on. Caribbean Island. So there we are. Okay. Then Duel for the Samurai Sword. Now this one, of course, it takes place in Japan, but something that I always thought was the case, and it's funny. I mean, these books weren't really popular, to be honest. Even back then, they weren't really well known, but the movie The Karate Kid Part 2, which came out, I think, in 1986 or so, I don't know, unless it's a coincidence, I think they stole a lot of their idea from this book. And it was never, they were never called out on that. So, it is what it is, but that's just my opinion. I think a lot of the plot's very similar, and this definitely came a few years before that. Okay, so now, Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan to a point, and I really don't like and I know a lot of people don't. I'm not going to get into a bandwagon on that or go into a diatribe of my own opinion, but I think that the Disney movies, the sequel movies, aren't very good. I really don't like them very much, and I think that the plot that they made, there was an entire book series that they made before that, which took place after Return of the Jedi, and quite a few things happened. It's a long story, but I think that that's more interesting than the Disney movies, the way they went. Anyway, these three are from that series. This is around the time of maybe 27 years after A New Hope, Episode 4. So, it's called The New Jedi Order. It's a long story, but to make a long story short, there are more Jedi. Luke did reestablish a Jedi Order, and rather than the Empire or the First Order or something similar to that being a threat again, the Empire had already surrendered by this point. They're completely not a threat. They're actually allies of the New Republic, which is what the rebels became, and the bad guys in this are from another galaxy. So it's a completely different threat. It's nothing to do with the Empire. It's not the same thing over again. It's a completely different thing. And these are three of those books. Dark Tide 2 Ruin, I'm sorry. Agents of Chaos 1, Hero's Trial. That's Han, actually. So, and again, he's supposed to be much older. Agents of Chaos 2, Jedi Eclipse. And I haven't read these for quite some time either. It's been a little while. Now, this is a book that I haven't read in almost 30 years. I've had it, but I haven't read it in a long time. The Mysterious Planet by Lester Del Rey. It's another science fiction novel. This one's from the 50s, maybe? I mean, this particular edition is from 1982, but I think it was made in the 50s. I like that. Not yet. 1953. I don't know if you can see that. You can see that. There you go. I like older science fiction like that. I mean, besides Star Wars, that's mostly, if I read any science fiction, it's mostly older. I just like the way, the way it's portrayed. And I mean, of course, this is all escapist. I mean, all of it is not true. I mean, obviously, I know that, whether it's a historical novel or, a historical fiction novel or the science fiction. But still, I think it's escapist enjoyment, and it doesn't have anything that I think it shouldn't have. So I enjoyed it. Now, Jane Austen, I know maybe some of you know Jane Austen. She's a writer from Regency England period. She actually was born exactly 200 years before I was, and she died in 1817. So she was fairly young when she died, in her early 40s. Anyway, she wrote some Regency romance novels. They're okay. I don't mind them. I don't read them regularly, but I do read these. These are not romance novels. These are actually mystery novels. I think I read at least one of them last month too. So I probably mentioned it in the last video. But basically, picture Jane Austen herself as a fictional character who, now everything that happens in these books, I mean, as far as her location and the people she meets are people she really met and the location she really was in. But the fictional part comes in that everywhere she goes, somebody winds up dying. It's a murder mystery, and she solves it. And of course, not like I'd say more like. I mean, she's younger than Miss Marple, but I would say more like Miss Marple or maybe Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote. Now, she's younger than those people, but she's a woman who she doesn't have any real affiliation with the police, and she's not a detective either, the way Sherlock Holmes is. People actively went to him to solve cases. It's not like that. She just happens to be in an area where someone dies, and she figures out who did it. And I really enjoy them. This one is Jane and the Barque of Frailty. It's a pretty good book. There's nothing objectionable in these. There's very little swearing. If anything, I think it might be the H and D word occasionally, and that's very occasionally anyway. But and there's nothing. There's they are murder mysteries, but they're not like violent. Like basically they just say someone was dead. They found someone that was dead, and there's no real sexual things in them. But a Barque of Frailty is actually a harlot, a prostitute, and the prostitute doesn't wind up being dead. It's a long story, but it's a long story. But either way, there's nothing actually really of a immoral nature in the book itself. So I enjoyed this one. This is, I think, book number 10, maybe 9 or so. So there's quite a few in the series. Then the one after that is actually a trade paperback. It's the next book in the series of Jane Austen, so I'm going to do that next. Jane and the Madness of Lord Byron. Again, I don't know how many of you are into history, but again, Lord Byron is a real person as well. But I would say this, in the books, the murder mysteries, the murderers are never, or at least I don't remember them ever being an actual historical figure. They usually just, a fictional person will be the murderer. But, and of course, I don't think, there's no proof that Jane Austen and Lord Byron ever met in real life. They were contemporaries, but their works are totally different, and they wouldn't have traveled in the same circles. Okay, so the Bobbsey Twins. I know I mentioned at least one of those books, last month. This is the Dune Buggy mystery. I don't like okay, so they made a series from 1904 to 1979. Those are just kind of like chapter adventure books, just of the adventures of the Bobbsey Twins, and I didn't really like them. But then in the 80s, from 1980 to 1986, they made a mystery series, as it even says, a pre-Nancy Drew Hardy Boys mystery. I used to love them. And then in 1987 to 1992, they made another mystery series called The New Bobbsey Twins, which I liked as well. I like that even better. So that's just one of them, the Dune Buggy mystery. Okay. Now, Dr. Dolittle, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Dr. Dolittle. I used to read those books a lot as a kid. But I will tell you what, I just noticed that I'm reaching the 10-minute mark. I know on YouTube, I can make a video of much longer, but on Flickr, which I'm also uploading the videos to Flickr, there's a 10-minute limit. So I will be back for part 2 very shortly. Thank you.